Hey everybody, Pat Benage here, the evolution coach, creator of the 6-Week Shift and the Inner Path, and author of this inspirational blog, SoulTalk. And last week talked about understanding, and understanding really is the basis of everything. Without it, we sort of randomly bounce through life, and yet it can be a place of holding us back if we become attached to what we understand, because it keeps us from expanding that understanding. Understanding also happens to be the baseline, the foundation, the first step in what I see as the process of personal evolution, where you go from understanding to acceptance to trust to integrity and consciousness, connection, and love. And what I want to talk about today is, and I've talked about all of these multiple times, but what I want to talk about today actually goes back to my very first Soul Talk that I did 4+ years ago, and it's deals with that second level acceptance, and one aspect of acceptance that I really want to talk about today, and that's acceptance of personal responsibility. A lot of spiritual paths, they talk about responsibility, they talk about that, but it tends to get, a little bit out there. Not to say that sometimes I'm not a little bit out there myself, but taking responsibility, accepting responsibility for one's own life, I think is absolutely the most critical part of our journey. Because when we accept responsibility for our life and all that happens within our life, that doesn't mean that, no, I'm not responsible for, somebody that comes into my life and does something damaging, hurts me in some way. I'm not responsible for their actions, but I am responsible for that opportunity to learn and grow. And I'm responsible for how I deal with that, whether I accept my part in it and look for what there is, what the message is for me, what the lesson is for me that I'm attracting to myself in order for me to learn this. And it's such, people misunderstand this so many times, because they think, well, that's blaming me for whatever happens in my life, for my troubles, my trials, my challenges in life, whatever those might be. And if we look at it that way, then that can drive you into a hole. But if you accept the responsibility that in a positive way, that you are actually in control of what you're bringing into your experience in order to grow and expand and evolve. And it's simply a matter of recognizing this, accepting what shows up, and learning the lesson. I mean, it really is that simple. And we're teaching ourselves this whole thing. It's an awakening, part of this early process is I term as the phase of awakening. And it's awakening our state of consciousness to our truth. See, we're in a state of consciousness that is different for everybody, but the vast majority, in the 99.99% plus, are in some level of human consciousness. Whether that's in a survival consciousness mode or in a very high end of that human consciousness, what we would call cosmic consciousness, it's still within the human consciousness realm, but it's at the highest point of that. It's what, many yogis and different gurus throughout history have looked at as the ultimate. I don't believe that it is the ultimate, but I recognize that it is a very significant point. But human consciousness ranges from there all the way down to, like I say, that survival mode. That's kind of the baseline for the human consciousness. And so we're awakening through these experiences. We're awakening ourselves to the higher state of consciousness. So we're constantly evolving from one level of consciousness to another until we reach realization, which is consciousness itself. It's not a state of consciousness, it's consciousness itself. And that is who we are. But until we've accepted responsibility for what's happening, for our experience, for all that presents itself, in some manner we have organized that for ourselves. We've done it for ourselves, for our own personal evolution. Everything that happens in your life has a purpose, is a part of your own personal evolution. But until you accept responsibility, until you recognize it and accept it and embrace it as part of your journey, no gain occurs. I mean, it's minute, but it's just so minimal that, it's a gain in terms of, okay, I've eliminated, one other possibility. It's like Edison, who tried, I don't know, the saying goes, he tried 10,000 ways to invent the light bulb that didn't work. He only had to find one that did. Well, as you continue to not accept it, you're eliminating one other aspect of, of a wrong perspective in terms of it's not completely accurate. And so that in a way moves you forward, but it's so minute that you're really kind of still moving laterally. But what I see the movement is, it's more of a kind of a circular movement that gradually goes up as we fill the foundation with crap. But when you accept responsibility, then you start moving upward in a more direct way. Even if you're just understanding that it's an indirect responsibility that you have in it, that maybe you're not directly responsible for the actual event that occurred. You know, could be a disease, could be an accident, could be somebody breaking into your house and stealing your stuff, or it could be all kinds of different things. Could be great things, wonderful things. You know, a relationship, a new, having a new child. There's so many things that can be fabulous, but they're all part of the journey, and it's important to accept responsibility for all that occurs, that somewhere in your consciousness you have contributed to the creation of that for the purpose of evolving, for the purpose of your personal evolution of consciousness. And when you accept responsibility, you start to move forward. I've said over and over that there's this spectrum, and everything lies on a spectrum of sorts, but acceptance is on the spectrum of acceptance and resistance. So at one end is total acceptance, and at the other end is total resistance. And at any given moment, we're somewhere in that spectrum, somewhere on that continuum. And what we want is to be more toward the end of acceptance and less resistant. Ultimately, where soul is always full acceptance of whatever shows up. Full acceptance of the responsibility for all that shows up. Knows that it is the creator of its own experience. Because that's really what that means. You accept responsibility, you accept the responsibility for being the creator of your own experience. And if you are the creator of your own experience, you're in control. There's nothing more empowering than that. As long as you think that there's something going on outside of yourself that's causing your experience, you've given up your power, basically. So, the message today, again, like it was in my very first Soul Talk, accept responsibility. I think in that one I said take responsibility, but accept responsibility. Accept it. It's part of your birthright, so to speak. You are the creator of your experience. Accept that. Embrace that. And life will become all that you can imagine it might be. It does that anyway. It does that anyway. So, thanks so much for joining me again this week. And much love to you all. Remember, live your life from the inside out. We'll see you next week.